Hi there. Thanks so much for tuning in. My name is Whitney Ball, and I am a women and children's therapist at Genesis Women's Shelter and Support. And this video is a part of a series of videos that we are doing designed for friends and family members of a woman who is either currently in an abusive relationship or has experienced an abusive relationship in the past. The goal of these videos is to help provide you information about domestic violence and how you can support your loved one on their healing journey. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can get into today's content. Today, I'm going to be focusing on the types of domestic violence that exist, as well as providing some information about how we know an abusive relationship violence can escalate. Just want to start off with some reminders. This video is purely for educational purposes only. It's not substitute actual therapy. This content, again, is designed for friends and family of a loved one who is or has been in an abusive relationship. I just want to always point out that every situation is going to be unique. So my goal with this video and with our series is to truly provide a general overview. Just know that each situation, each family, each friend group is going to have its own unique attributes and challenges. Also, I feel like I'd be a bad therapist if I didn't point out that this information and talking about abuse can be challenging and or triggering. So please do what you need to do to support your own mental well-being and take care of your mental health. Engage in self-care, pause this video, take breaks, turn it off if it feels like it's too overwhelming. And at the end of the video, I will be talking about the support that we do provide at Genesis for women and children who have experienced domestic violence. So just know that that support is available, and I'll be providing an overview at the end. So first and foremost, I just want to quickly define what is domestic violence. So domestic violence occurs when one person in an intimate partner relationship exercises power and control over the other through a pattern of intentional behaviors. You'll see we bolded some words in this definition. So it's one person who is having power and control over their partner, and it's intentional. We're going to always be talking about the why behind domestic violence, and the why is power and control. Another more broad definition that we will often use when educating people about domestic violence is that domestic violence is the systematic diminishment of a woman in her home. Today, specifically, I want to dig into the different types of violence that exist. I've broken it down into 4 categories, but hear me say that this is not an inclusive list. You will hear about a lot of other different types of domestic violence, but just for the sake of video and to make this a little bit more digestible, we are breaking it down into verbal and emotional, physical, and sexual abuse today. So verbal and emotional abuse. I'm not going to read through the whole list, but I have it up here on the screen for you to do that on your own. But when we are talking about someone who has experienced verbal and emotional abuse, please understand that if she has only experienced verbal and emotional abuse, she has been in an abusive relationship. There's a lot of misconceptions still today out in our world that it's not that bad unless it gets physical. And we know from our work with clients that the verbal and emotional can be just as impactful, if not more impactful than the physical abuse. So if she is only, quote unquote, experienced verbal and emotional abuse, she has still been in an abusive relationship. And remember, the why behind all of these is to maintain power and control over her. I will probably be coming back to that multiple times today. So some of the big ones I want to point out, things like isolation, cutting her off from her support system. This isn't going to necessarily always look the same. Like I said, there are so many unique situations. This might look like her partner telling her, you know, your family just doesn't get us. They don't understand our relationship. And so you might be trying to explain to her that they're abusive, or he's in her ear telling her, like, see, like, your family's always been so critical of me. They've never liked me. He's constantly putting her down, criticizing her every move, name calling, things that she has tried to be perfect on. He's still criticizing her and making her feel small so that she feels low self-esteem, doesn't feel like there's another way out. We see a lot of things like the silent treatment where they're not even saying anything, but the power of them abuser just ignoring her, not responding to her text can cause a lot of emotional damage for our clients. There might be a lot of lying and manipulation, maybe even rising to the level of what we call gaslighting or crazy making. We see, unfortunately, lots of abusers using the court system as a way to continue abuse even after the relationship has ended. I always point out like this look that you see in quotes. I describe this a lot as like if you were with your partner at a party and he catches your eye from across the room, you're talking with a group of friends, you can just tell that he's pissed off, and you know that later down the road he's going to get mad at you. Maybe it's when you get in the car, maybe it's when you're alone together at the party. So that look in itself is a form of emotional abuse because he uses that to maintain power and control. Some of these on this list could be their own categories, such as digital abuse, financial abuse, spiritual abuse. They have all different tactics underneath them as well. Sometimes the abuse might not rise to the level of physical abuse, but there might be threats of physical abuse, threats of hurting loved ones, threats of taking you to court or taking the children away, threats that your children won't be okay if you try to leave the relationship. So threats are a really powerful form of emotional abuse. And then lastly, I just want to point out this last bullet of emotional abuse, social engineering. So many, if not most of my clients come to me and say, everyone outside of our relationship thinks he's great. They think he's just a stand-up dad. He's the life of the party when we go to family gatherings. His friends love him. Social engineering means manipulating how the world outside of your relationship sees the abuser. And so he doesn't want them to see him as an abuser. He doesn't want the outside world to think that he's the problem. It's going to make it really hard for her to think that she'll be believed if she wants to leave, or if she even brings up the abuse to other people. They'll say things like, oh, not John, he's such a great guy. He's stand-up guy. He's the leader of the Cub Scouts group. And, he's always helping out whenever someone's having a hard time. And so it makes it feel like she's the problem and that he is this really great guy. And it keeps her, again, isolated and feeling like she's alone. When I'm explaining physical abuse to my clients who have been in an abusive relationship, I always point out that physical abuse is, of course, going to be someone laying direct hands on you. And that's kind of what we think about when we think about physical abuse in a relationship. However, physical abuse can also mean that your partner is using their body as a form of intimidation. To make it known that they could hurt you. So this could look like trying to block exits to the house, to the room that you're arguing in. This might even mean like taking a really strong posture over you, getting in your personal space, breaking things around you. Again, it doesn't have to be just that traditional pushing or shoving, slapping or punching that we think of. And I also want to make it really clear to my friends and family who are wanting to support women, just because she does not have bruises or marks does not mean she hasn't experienced physical abuse. So things like arm twisting where her sleeve is, so he knows that no one will ever see those marks, or driving recklessly, so she fears for her life in the car and feels like she needs to give in to whatever he's saying, is also a sign of physical abuse, a type of physical abuse that's not going to leave a mark. Hiding her shoes, clothes, or money so she can't leave, hovering or posturing, again, kind of like that, I could hurt you if I wanted to, making her feel really scared. We know that, unfortunately, if weapons are a part of the equation, her risk of homicide goes up exponentially. And so lots of safety planning we're wanting to do around physical safety if weapons are involved. That trapping someone so they don't feel safe, pulling their hair, Same with strangulation. If strangulation has been a part of the abusive relationship, her risk of death goes up exponentially. Strangulation is going to be a partner putting their hands on her airway, so that either pretending to cut off her breathing or making it hard for her to breathe. So this list, I hope, helps you understand that physical abuse is not just that one way you might have thought about it due to media. There are so many things that fall under physical abuse. The same goes for sexual abuse. When I am educating clients about sexual abuse, I will often say if it's happening in the living room, if it's happening in the kitchen, most likely then the abuse is happening in the bedroom as well. We often think of sexual abuse as simply rape or forced sex, but this list again shows you that it is so much more than that, and it is a violation of her body and her what she desires to do with her body. This can look like forced or sex, rape or forced sex, excuse me, but it can also include so many other things. Threatening to break up with someone, or even threatening anything if she doesn't have sex. Coercing her into sex is a really big one. So a lot of women have a hard time identifying sexual abuse because they say, well, you know, Whitney, after he like wouldn't shut up about it, I finally just gave in because it was going to be easier to just shut him up and to know that he wouldn't get angrier and that I could finally get some sleep because I knew the 2-year-old would be up in a couple hours and I just needed a couple hours of sleep. So I knew that if I just gave in to sex, then that would allow me a few moments of peace and quiet. That's not, that is coerced sex. That was not her willingly giving over sex. She was forced into doing so. Unwanted pictures, sexting, again, reproductive coercion, so controlling what she wants to do with her reproductive health, denying access to birth control, or forcing her to have kids or not allowing her to have kids, forcing uncomfortable sexual experiences on her that she is not interested in, or sex when she is asleep or too drunk, not able to make sound decisions. Also, withholding sex as well can be a form of sexual abuse. So now that we have a little bit of understanding of the different types of abuse, again, that is not a comprehensive list, but just to help you start to understand that a lot of times in our world, we see it as a very limited scope, and hopefully these lists help you understand that there are lots of different types of abuse out there. I also want to talk about how violence in a relationship can escalate. So we know that if that verbal and emotional abuse is present, then there is a high likelihood that it can escalate into the physical and the sexual and physical abuse. So you'll see that on this slide that it starts off just as we will often hear people describe it, as just maybe some name calling, some being sarcastic, starting to be really suspicious or not trusting the abusive partner. But ultimately, we need to take those signs of abuse just as seriously as the physical, because it can absolutely escalate to that. And we know that if these things lower down on this spectrum are present, then her risk of homicide is absolutely there. And so if your loved one is telling you about types of abuse that she's experienced, it can be really important for you to understand that things can get worse. So if she's saying, well, you know, he's just, that's a key word to listen for. He's just doing this. He's just being a little bit like hyper protective of my time. It's important for you to keep in mind that can escalate to so much worse. And the reason why things will escalate in a relationship is because the things lower on the spectrum are no longer giving him the power and control that he wants over his partner. And so he then chooses to escalate and engage in more harmful abuse tactics in order to have that power and control. So as I mentioned at the beginning, Genesis does offer support for women and children who have experienced domestic violence. So if your loved one is wanting to get services and support from us, that is available. We offer counseling, advocacy support for things like housing and legal services and clothing and food and getting her connected to other resources in the community. We have parenting classes. We have children's and teen therapy as well. So know that there is support for her. And so if you're watching this and your loved one who has experienced domestic violence is wondering where to reach out to, if she is in the DFW area, we would love to get her connected with our services and offer her that support. Super easy to get started. All she needs to do is call our 24-hour helpline. It's listed right here under my title, 214-946-4357. She can call that number 24/7 for both English and Spanish and start getting connected with services. Again, this isn't for counseling for you yourself as the friend or family member, but this is for your loved one if she is looking for services. I really appreciate you tuning in today to watch. I hope you'll take time to watch some of our other friends and family videos. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much.